at Boston Avenue Podcast. My name is Alicia Urban, and my co-host is Caitlin Dryke. Before we begin, I'd like to state that the views represented in this podcast are those of the individuals in this conversation and not the official position of Boston Avenue United Methodist Church. Today, our guests are a few of our senior high youth. We have Julian, our youth council president, and Chris, our youth council public relations representative. Welcome.
Thank you.
To start with, Julian, can you tell me why we asked you and Chris to be on this podcast today?
Well, we're here to talk about becoming a Reconciling Ministries youth group. We've just written a welcoming statement to go up on the fourth floor, and so we're becoming a reconciling group, which means a lot of different things that I guess we'll explain.
Chris, can you tell us how the reconciling process works?
I can. There's quite a few steps involved. So first, it was Alicia presented it to the youth council in a meeting, and we approved the idea of becoming a reconciling youth group. And then it was presented to the senior high action team, which is a group of adults and youth that make decisions involving the senior high youth group. And then the youth council presented it to the youth group on a activity after a DTBA on Wednesday night, and the youth group eventually voted unanimously to become reconciling. And then we had a volunteer system for youth who were interested to help write the welcoming statement. And then the entire youth group voted on the statement during the past week and a half or so. And as of today, the senior high has officially adopted the welcoming statement, which we will now send to Reconciling Ministries Network.
Can you share that welcoming statement?
Yeah. This is Julian. So our welcoming statement is, welcome to Boston Avenue Senior High Youth Group. Our goals are to serve the community, grow in our faith, and have fun as a group of friends. We don't all agree on everything, but our diversity of thought helps us to grow. Regardless of race, ethnicity, class, sexual orientation, gender expressions, political beliefs, physical or mental ability, or religious backgrounds, we journey together towards a deeper understanding of God. In the spirit of John Wesley, we strive to do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. We welcome and affirm all as active participants in the mission, ministry, and life of the church.
What does it mean to be reconciling?
Well, I think there's a lot that it means, but aside from just being a sign to all other youth that are looking for a reconciling youth group, it shows a lot about the personality of the students in the Boston Avenue Senior High Youth Group, which I think is something that is very important, and we have seen that is tried to be pushed and promoted. And it really shows that not only the stance of the youth group, but what I believe the stance of the church is trying to take as a progressive church. And I think it shows a lot of the boldness that we're taking as a group.
Well, really the actual act of becoming a reconciling youth group is more of just like an official stance of what we've pretty much, for the most part, already been trying to do. We've always been a welcoming youth group. We'll accept, pretty much anyone we can get into the youth group. We don't discriminate here. So putting up an actual welcoming statement and becoming an official Reconciling Ministries youth group is just kind of putting ourselves out there. We're going to be on the website for Reconciling Ministries, and it's being more public, I think, with our progressive views and how welcoming we are in the youth group.
Were there any challenges that you guys had when your youth group looked at being reconciling?
For the most part, it was pretty unanimous. The biggest thing that we had a little bit of a dispute when we were writing the welcoming statement involving the diversity of the youth group, but we eventually decided on what you heard earlier, talking about the diversity of thought. And really that conversation in itself showed the strength of our youth group, and is something that our youth that are looking for a reconciling group will enjoy.
Like it said in the welcoming statement, we don't always agree on anything, but we're free to listen to each other's beliefs and talk and discuss with each other, and we respect each person's point of view.
Why is it important to you as the leaders of Boston Avenue Senior High Youth Group to be reconciling?
It's really a great opportunity for our youth group to grow. I know that one of the missions that the youth council decided this year was to grow the size of our youth group and expand. And we've definitely done a good job of that so far, and this is just another step into that. Now, I'm not saying that the only reason we did this was so that we could get more people. It's also to show our welcomingness, obviously. But it's definitely a great bonus, and it's something that we've really been trying to do and will definitely help us get there.
Yeah. I think it's important just to show people, because it can kind of be nerve-wracking, I think, to join a new church, especially coming into a youth group where you're not really going to know anyone. So it can be a lot more comforting to see, as soon as you walk into the youth group, a welcoming statement saying that everyone here is going to welcome you. No one's going to discriminate against you here in this youth group. You can be yourself and be who you are. I think that's really important to comfort people coming into the new youth group and help them settle in better.
What could a youth visitor coming to your youth group expect?
They can expect to be welcome. They can expect to be accepted and cared for, and they can also expect to be included, for sure. I'd say that's the biggest part. There's a lot of youth groups in the world that just aren't accepting and are exclusive and cliquey, and I would say that ours is, there's not a single person in this youth group that I'm not friends with and can't have a one-on-one conversation with for an hour and a half.
Yeah, we've actually got some new people moving to the youth group who didn't really have a great experience. We've got quite a few people moving into the youth group who didn't have a great experience with their old churches. So it's really nice for them to be able to come and see how much different our youth group is and have a safe space where, they really can just be themselves and they don't have to put on a filter as soon as they come to church and, try to pretend to be something that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Just to dig a little deeper, we talk about, a welcoming statement and that the youth group welcomes everybody. What to you personally does being welcomed look like or feel like?
As soon as you walk into the youth group, you're greeted with a smile and, hey, I'm glad you're here. It's good to see you. Little things like that you might take for granted, but some other place you might not get that. And I think it really can make a difference just to know that people care for you. As soon as you walk in, you're being welcomed, not just welcomed as in respected, but, physically welcomed. People are glad to see you. They're smiling. Everyone's happy, things like that.
It's often hard for youth to be able to look, for youth in a youth group to be able to look from the point of view of someone who is new to the group and go out of their way to introduce themselves. But I think that is something that our youth group can really pride itself on, is we go out of our way to talk to people that we don't see often, or talk to people that's their first time at the church, and not only just people in the youth group, but also our older members of the church and our people that we see every day in the service.
I'm going to hop over to ask Alicia a question. As director of senior high, what were your feelings as they went through this process?
I was really impressed to watch the leadership that our youth council took. They looked at what it was, they found why it was important to them, and they were the ones who presented it. They chose to do this, and they presented it to their fellow youth. They answered questions, helped facilitate writing the welcome statement. As they've mentioned, this is what they've already been doing. I've been in this position for a year and have seen the way that they go out of their way to welcome and accept all of the people who come to them. And so this is just a way of living into the mission that they already do.
Speaking of things, like you say, stuff that we've already been doing, this is something that I wanted to say because I did bring some new people to our church. They came from a church where they didn't feel accepted, and they were two girls, and they felt that their church was, or their youth group was pretty sexist, and they didn't feel like they could, be like themselves. So I brought them to our church, and after bringing them, I was talking to them after Wednesday night, which was the first time they came, and they told me that as soon as they came in, they felt like they belonged here. And usually they were pretty nervous about meeting new people, and they were worried if they were going to make friends with everyone, but they felt like they were immediately welcomed and immediately part of the group. They felt like they had been here forever as soon as they came, and I think that's really important.
So our senior high is the first Sunday school class in this church to become Reconciling. How does that feel for both of you to know that you have made that landmark jump before any of the other classes?
I think it's huge. Mostly Sunday school classes would definitely say that they fall underneath this category, but for a youth group that lives under the shadow of the elders of the church, I would say, it's a big deal to know that we're starting something and given this opportunity, just this group itself, to be able to have this platform to show our welcomingness.
Yeah, I think the biggest, the most important thing is, all change has to start somewhere. And I think what we're doing here, starting off becoming a reconciling group, can lead to, because most of the church is progressive. A lot of the elders at the church do, for the most part, share our beliefs. So I think us becoming a reconciling group can help facilitate that change and kind of encourage the other Sunday school classes to, maybe follow in our footsteps.
Do you have any words of wisdom for some of the adult Sunday school classes that are thinking about becoming reconciling? I know that there are about 3 off the top of my head that I can think of that have been having conversations about whether to do it.
I would tell them to go for it. You will have 0 regrets, and you will find that not only is it great for your Sunday school class as a whole, it really shows the personality that you take and that you have. To not be reconciling, I believe, is to not love fully. And there's a verse in Corinthians that talks about love, hope, and peace, and the greatest of these is love. I may have that wrong, but the greatest of these is love. And so I think that it's clearly important to show that we're accepting and welcome, and our church needs to take this standpoint, and I think it's awesome that there are other people that are looking into it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think some of my words of wisdom would just be, if you are going to become a reconciling youth group, when you're writing a welcoming statement and you're voting on this, just include everyone in the writing of it so you can get as many viewpoints as possible. Like I said, we had a little bit of a dispute when we were writing our welcoming statement, but I think that dispute and discussing how we wanted to write it helped us come out with a better welcoming statement in the end, because we were able to take everyone's viewpoints into account. So I think it's really important just to, when you're actually voting and writing your welcoming statement, to make sure you have as many people included in it as possible.
Just to zoom out a little bit, for maybe our listeners who aren't Methodist or who don't know as much about Reconciling Ministries Network, Alicia, could you give a small overview, and maybe our youth could chime in if there are additional insights?
Absolutely. Reconciling Ministries Network is an organization that churches, groups such as Sunday schools or youth groups, or individuals can join just to make a public statement saying that they not only welcome but affirm all people regardless of sexual orientation or gender expression.
I think, like Alicia said, becoming a Reconciling Ministries group is kind of putting out there that you accept all people regardless of sexual orientation or gender expression, which I think is important, because church can kind of be like a stereotypically place that I think for people of the LGBTQ community is kind of seen generally, like a generalized thing, that's somewhere that you won't be accepted, just because so many churches are like that. It can kind of be a daunting thing to try and come to a church where you really aren't sure where you're going to be accepted, because so many other churches aren't like that. So putting ourselves out there and saying, the first thing that you'll see is that we will accept you here, and we're not gonna push you out or discriminate against you. I think that's really good, because that can help bring people into the church and make them less fearful of joining.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Julian said, and so many people have been harmed by the church telling them that they are less than, or that who God created them to be is somehow a sin. And I'm very proud of our youth who go against that absolute lie and say who God created you to be is wonderful and beautiful, and we love you and accept you.
And just to add in, at Boston Avenue, so our youth group is our senior high youth group is our first Sunday school class to become a reconciling group. We do have an existing reconciling group called Crystal Rivers, and that has existed at Boston Avenue for some time now, but it's exciting to see more participation.
And Boston Avenue has done a lot of work around this conversation, including the beloved prayer service and worship service, which several of our youth took part in, singing and praying.
And Julian, you were a part of that service,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we sang a beautiful piece that I think was really meaningful and hit really deep. Actually, looking out into the congregation during that service, I did see quite a few people crying, because it was a really meaningful, impactful service, and I think it hit home for a lot of people. We had some great speakers at the service too about what it means to be an LGBTQ person in the faith, and what it means to find a church where you're accepted.
Is there anything else about reconciling or welcoming or about the Boston Avenue Senior High Youth Group in general that you would want to add?
I think if you're anyone out there listening to the podcast and you don't have a church home, you're looking for somewhere to go, I would say come to Boston Avenue. We'll love you and accept you just as you are, regardless of your past, regardless of where you were before. This is the place to be.
Yeah, it's definitely a home environment. I find myself here doing more activities than anywhere else. I spend just about as much time doing things through Boston Avenue as I do doing things through my school.
Yeah,
it's in my Instagram bio. That's how much I do it. Yeah,
I think I'm closer with my church friends here at church and spend more time with them than any of my friends at school. I'm so glad that I've been able to grow up at this church. I was actually at a church all through elementary school before I came to Boston Avenue in 6th grade, and I kind of lost interest in it. I didn't go as much as I could have, and then some people here in the congregation who I consider part of my family brought me to Boston Avenue in 6th grade, and I've been here ever since, and I couldn't be happier that they brought me here and that I was able to become a part of the youth group. I couldn't be more thankful.
Yeah, Julian and I are in a very similar situation in that viewpoint. I just felt not included, and I didn't feel like it was an opportunity to voice my opinion or a place where I could be accepted. And I went to Boston Avenue on Wednesdays because my grandma, Debbie Peterson, was a youth director at the time, and I loved it, and I realized that it was a better environment and a better home for me, and I just had more fun here, and I realized it's where I needed to be.
Yeah, God bless Debbie. Everyone loves Debbie in the youth group. I think part of the reason that I kind of settled into the youth group and really wanted to stay here for the rest of my middle school and high school time was that I felt so welcomed by Debbie, and she really, Debbie is actually Chris's grandma, but being a kid in the youth group, I felt like she was my grandma too. I felt like she was everyone's grandma.
Yeah, me too.
I want to thank both of you, not only for being on our podcast today, but for the leadership that you both provide the Boston Avenue Senior High Youth. We are so much better because of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been the Ascends at Boston Avenue podcast. We are located at 1301 South Boston Avenue in downtown Tulsa, Oklahoma. Please check out our social media for more information about what's going on at Boston Avenue. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you.